Genocide, an attempt to wipe out a nation, is not a term to be used lightly. But Ukraine says Russia's kidnapping of thousands of Ukrainian children is part and parcel of Vladimir Putin's stated war aim to Russify Ukraine and kill those who resist. So is Russia's treatment of stolen Ukrainian children part of a genocidal plan? To answer this question, I'm going on the record with Thordis Gylfadottir, the Council of Europe's Special Envoy for Ukrainian Children and former Foreign Minister of Iceland.
We were put on Kamaz trucks and taken to the filtration camp.
Fear of not knowing, of not understanding. I was trying to at least find out if my son was alive or not.
They said that Ukraine would cease to exist soon, that nobody needed us anymore, and that we would never return.
This is nothing but a genocide of the Ukrainian people through our children.
Minister, thank you very much for joining TVP World today.
Thank you for having me.
So is what Russia doing when it comes to Ukrainian children comparable to anything we've seen since the Second World War? And is this indeed a genocide, as we heard in this report?
Well, we have reports, facts and data that shows definitely that Russia is committing war crimes. Of course, we have independent, courts that will have to take that on. War crimes, war against humanity, genocide, cultural genocide. I mean, that is something for the independent courts to look into. But we already have an arrest warrant, as we know, on Vladimir Putin and Maria Lvova-Belova. So we have not seen in these numbers, since the Second World War. And we don't even know the number, really. I mean, we know that these are tens and thousands of children. But what is important is to track them, to know where they are, to bring them back, and then to hold Russia accountable for their actions, because this is not a consequence of being in a war. This is strategic and systematic from the top down, and it's horrific. And I think every normal human being understands how fundamentally wrong it is to steal other people's children. And therefore, this should be extremely high on the political agenda, and this should be, it is very important to raise awareness about the fact that this is happening in real time, that we know it, we see it, we track it, and also for regions that are, more neutral when it comes to this war, Russia's war in Ukraine, because this is the part of the full-scale war that I think every normal human being, understands and feels is not right.
So how do you feel when you see so many countries or individuals around the world seem to be justifying what Russia is doing in Ukraine and ignoring this issue?
I think what we need to do is to raise awareness, even in European countries that in general know more about what is going on in Ukraine than maybe in other parts of the world. There are still far too many people that don't know that this is happening, that don't know the scale of it. And again, even in groups or regions or countries where people try to justify what Russia is doing, I haven't met many that say that this is something that you can't justify. Of course, we hear people say, oh, this is just Western propaganda, this is not really happening, because that's what the Russians say. But that is a minority. So if people would know, I think that would have an effect, and therefore I'm grateful to be here. And it is crucial for the media, not only in Europe but also in the United States. This is a bipartisan issue in the United States. Therefore, we should, very much increase our political push. You cannot talk about a just peace in Ukraine without tackling this issue and bringing the children back to Ukraine.
So when the Russians are saying that they are taking these children to safety and it has nothing to do with forced kidnapping or stealing children, what is the evidence to the contrary?
Well, we have evidence. I mean, we have children that have actually been brought back, who have their testimonies, who have their stories. We have, Yale Humanitarian Research Lab that is, tracking tens and thousands of children in Russia, in more than 200 locations, and also going through Belarus. And so we know that this is not voluntarily happening. We have testimonies, facts, and data, evidence that that's not the case. But of course, they use their narratives. They say, we were rescuing them from danger and so forth. But that's just not the case. And we already have, as I said, data, facts, reports, and knowledge that that's not the case.
Are you meeting some of the victims, both parents and children, when you're in Ukraine or elsewhere?
I have met children that have been brought back. Some of them with their parents because of their age. So I've heard their stories. Also, I've been in conferences and panels where you have.
Can you tell our viewers how it is from their perspective? Something that you remember vividly as something.
Yes, I can picture them in my head when I think about it. I mean, of course, their stories are different. They're not all the same. But what they all have in common is that they're not allowed to speak Ukrainian. They are forced to speak Russian. They are, in general, they're told that either their parents are not alive, their parents don't love them, Ukraine will not continue to exist, and so forth. Some of them, and that we also have some knowledge of, but we have to dig deeper into that, and that is part of what I want to do in my mandate, is to have to do a research to have more information about the indoctrination, which is something that people should also know about, that they are planning to use Ukrainian children to go to the front line and fight their own people who are, sacrificing their life, possibly, to fight for the future of those same children. That is also part of what they're doing. To Russify them and to basically try to erase their identity. And this is something that is known from history, but what we are doing now is we are tracking them. We know that this is happening, and we have the ability to actually do something about it. Of course, it is extremely complex. And I saw on the video, I saw Mikhailo Kuleba from Save Ukraine. I mean, what they are doing is remarkable. We have a little over 1,800 children that have been brought back, most of them through rescue missions. We have some countries that are working through mediation between both sides. Hopefully we'll get more of those countries and hopefully in bigger numbers, children that will be brought back. But you can, 1,800 out of tens and thousands, if that's the pace that this will, continue on, it's obvious that those children will not be children when eventually, and some of them, of course, I mean, we know that Russia has been simplifying, adoption procedures and so forth. So again, that shows that this is systematic, administrative, strategic thing that they're doing. And for some of the children, it will be extremely difficult, even impossible, to actually trace them. I mean, it's down to if you have a child that was maybe 18 months old, that child will not remember.
Right. So time is on Putin's side here.
It is. Time is on Putin's side, and again, I mean, it has to happen in bigger numbers. It has to be a political push from the international community, and this has to be a top priority in any talks about any form of peace negotiations or just peace.
Right. So how solid is the evidence that the International Criminal Court, which indicted Mr. Putin along with the misnomer misnamed ombudswoman for children's rights, the lady you just mentioned. How solid is that evidence?
I believe it's solid. At least it's solid enough for them to actually go through with it. And again, what is crucial is that we continue to gather evidence, collect the data, and share it with the bodies that will need it. And that is crucial for accountability. And I do think, of course, Ukraine puts a lot of focus on, bringing them back, keep it as a priority, and on accountability. But for us, for Europe, and for the Western world, and basically human beings that cherish the rule-based order and international law, we should be the ones to make sure that the accountability part is there. It shouldn't be Ukrainians who should, have to ask for support for tracking and so forth, because that is, for a civilized world, that is a fundamental thing to do.
You mentioned that already, because I want to go back to this Maria Lvova-Belova, right? This lady who is instrumental, and you said that she helped change the regulations. Who is she? What is her role in all of this?
Well, she seems to have quite an important role. And of course, she has this title, so she has, a mandate and a power. But she has also been quite vocal. I watched an interview with her where she was quite vocal with what they're doing, and the fact
saying it openly.
Yeah, very, very, very openly. That they are, adopting children and taking them from, temporarily occupied territories. And so forth. And so
why do you think European leaders are not really taking this up as a big issue? Because apart from you and maybe a few others, we don't hear enough about it. But for example, when the group of leaders from Europe went to the White House not so long ago, Ursula von der Leyen used her opportunity there. This was her main point in the White House, and I was very grateful for that. We have seen increased media attention. This is something that President Zelensky usually talks about in his speeches. And again, we've also seen increased support. For example, the European Union has been increasing their support inside Ukraine when it comes to the children that are actually being brought back, because of course they need, a lot of psychological support. Why? Can you give us an example of the traumas that these children go through?
Of course, it depends on their situation and also how long they've been there. Usually it's a different thing to receive a child that has been in Russia for 6 months than someone that has been there for 2.5 years, as you can imagine. If they have been basically brainwashed, you have to reintegrate them into Ukrainian society. They need rehabilitation.
But how about physical violence? There have been these reports of sexual violence committed by Russian troops on occupied territories against Ukraine. How evidence is that?
We have all forms of violations, basically. Not with every child, but we have that as well. And they also need,
How widespread is that?
I couldn't say. I don't think we. We have some information in different, memos and reports, but I don't think we. At least I can't say. I'm sure there's someone that could be, more accurate on it, but I'm not sure that we not necessarily know exactly. But they will also need, healthcare assistance, for example, and to close educational gap. And that is also their fundamental right to access education. So the Ukrainians need also more, human resources. They need training, and that is something that the Council of Europe has been focused on, with e-learning, training for.
This is like looking to the future. This is not yet justice. This is helping them return to their nation, if you will. But I'm more interested in this issue of how to pursue justice here.
Well, I would say, the pace of, the numbers that are being brought back, it's happening too slow. So we need more, the NGOs inside Ukraine need more support. If we will see any form of peace negotiations, that this has to be a part of any form of peace negotiations. That could mean that we would receive them in bigger numbers than we are doing now. But we also have to make sure that the Ukrainian society has the capacity and the infrastructure needed to bring them back, because they have to be rebuilt. And when we talk about, rebuilding Ukraine and reconstruction, sometimes it feels, in my opinion, that it's, a lot about energy infrastructure, roads and bridges, but you can't really, rebuild a country without, investing in the future of that nation. And so trauma-informed care is crucial, not only for the children that are being brought back, but also in general for, children that have been, living in a war for almost 4 years now. And that is, you can imagine, for grown-ups, almost 4 years is a long time. For a child, that is it's an eternity. So trauma-informed care is also crucial, and that is something that I feel all leaders should be focused on as well. And the financial support needed in that is very tiny compared to other forms of support.
So overall, you said it's probably tens of thousands. Is there a more specific estimate? Are we talking about the hundreds of thousands, or?
Well, I can't say, but we know at least tens and thousands. And then if you take into account the temporarily occupied territories in Ukraine, the number of children all combined is 1.6 million. So what kind of access and information do we have about their situation, their well-being? We, all we know is that it's not good, but we don't know, we don't have, overview or information about how many of the 1.6 million are still there. Have, in big numbers, children been taken from the temporarily occupied territories. So we do not know the number, but what we know is at least tens and thousands, and I'm afraid the number is higher actually.
Right. One of the most disturbing elements of this is that there are reports that some of these children are put in camps and trained as soldiers. You mentioned that. Is there any evidence that some of them are already fighting their mothers, fathers, brothers on the front line?
I couldn't confirm if they have actually been sent to the front line, but we have information that they are, yes, being indoctrinated, and that the plan is to send them to the front line. And if you think about, a Ukrainian boy who was maybe 15 years old when he was taken, I mean, he's now,
almost 19.
Yeah, so he's more than 18, and that part, it's just.
So how can this identity survive? Because you said you spoke to some of the children that were brought back, and we also saw in this material that they are aware of their Ukrainian identity and roots.
Yeah.
So what is the picture emerging there? Is this indoctrination, in other words, successful by Russia?
It's successful, for many children, and of course their situation it's just so different. I mean, if you've been, their background, their situation when they were taken matters, where they go, what kind of Russification is happening, for how long, and just what kind of trauma they go through. But I have also met, children where they basically, they knew all along that this was wrong. They still, knew the truth and kept, kept their faith. But then we also have success stories on reintegration and rehabilitation, where with psychological support, we can invest in those human lives to make sure that they are part of, Ukrainians' future.
Right. Now I would like to go back to what you said about the need for this to be part of any settlement in the future.
Yeah.
And also, I have a sense that you're saying that there's a certain shortage of allies when it comes to this particular issue and everything that surrounds the Russia's war on Ukraine. Melania Trump, the US First Lady, said a month ago that she was working with Russia to facilitate the return of more children. So far, it seems she managed to secure the freedom of 8 of them, but she remains hopeful.
8 children have been rejoined with their families during the past 24 hours. Plans are already underway to reunify more children in the immediate future. I hope peace will come soon. It can begin with our children.
Have you had any dealings with Ms. Trump, and is she part of your network working on this issue?
Not yet. I mean, I would be more than happy to have a dialogue with her, and I truly, both wish her all the best in her efforts, and I truly wish that she keeps this on the agenda. But because, of course, I mean, the attention that it brings and the platform that she has is tremendous. So if she would be, all in on assisting in this, we could see some real, results and success. So
she's been mentioned as someone who can actually influence Donald Trump, and that she actually did that. She was even at some point called a silent ally of Ukraine.
Yeah.
Do you see more evidence of that positive role?
I don't have any, personal information on that. I just, follow it closely and read whatever I can on this issue. We can hope. And again, I mean, the platform that she has and the attention that it brings is remarkable. So she could definitely, make sure that we would see some result, and that would be, a very, very big and beautiful contribution on her behalf.
So we're hearing now just these days that the US is again talking to Russia unofficially about a ceasefire or even a peace deal. So how big is the risk that the Ukrainian children will be sacrificed in a quick deal?
I mean, that is part of the, real world and the, you could say, cold reality. Of course, a person in my position, for example, has to be quite adaptive on, external developments and what is decided on bigger scale somewhere else. But I just can't see how, human beings with power can say, quite confident and proudly that we now have any form of peace and not deal with the fact that the Russian Federation has stolen tens and thousands of children and are not planning to give them back. I think for people in power and for every, like I mentioned, every normal human being understands that cannot be called peace. So I truly hope that will be a part of any form of peace negotiations.
So what is your next task in the next few months? Do you plan to meet some of these officials you mentioned as perhaps not as outspoken on this? What is your plan? What is your target? What is your goal?
Well, I will be traveling to Stockholm next week to a conference, and there will be quite many important people there, but of course not maybe a lot of neutral people. I will be traveling to Doha Forum in Qatar early December. There I will have an opportunity to have a dialogue and talks with people outside the,
But we have some big powers around the world, some of the emerging powers, Brazil, India, they seem to be completely immune to any information about this. Why is that, and what are you going to do about this?
Well, for example, I can say that, Qatar has been taking on a role as mediator between both sides. That has shown results, and I do hope that will continue, and I do hope that we will see more countries taking on such a role, because we will need other countries that can have a dialogue with Russia to do that. And I know from and that is being worked on many fronts to increase the numbers of countries that could do so.
Okay.
And hopefully we will see that.
We have time for just last question. Here in Poland there is a debate about limiting financial support for some of the Ukrainian refugees, including children, so the child benefit and other things. What would you say to politicians and average Poles who support such a attitude?
I mean, I'm not gonna. I'm trying not to interfere with domestic politics, but as a human being to other human beings in Poland, I would say that what is happening in Ukraine is basically it's a test of everything we stand for, and for us who have the privilege to be, free, literally free. We have to do what we can to support the people that are actually sacrificing, their life to become that kind of society that Poland is now. And I mean, I come from a country that has not been invaded, so we might take it for granted. I try not to, and I look at, for example, Poland and the Baltic states, and I say this everywhere I can. I mean, these are such great examples of a recipe that works, If when you are a country that is, truly free, you can offer your citizens, such a quality of life, and that is worth fighting for. So what we do to support them is a tiny cost in the bigger picture, and as I know from facts from this country, they're actually, giving more into society than they are taking. And that's a very important fact to keep in mind.
Thordis, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for watching. This was On the Record. See you next week.